Good evening. On behalf of the trustees and overseers at the New England Aquarium, welcome to the Simon's IMAX Theater and the 11th lecture of our fall 2013 season. I'm Meg Kelly. I sit on the board of overseers. And in this season of Counting Our Blessings, I would like to tell you how grateful I am to be a part of this exceptional institution, which would not be where it is today if it weren't for the extraordinarily devoted and talented scientists and staff that work here. And on that note, it's my pleasure and honor to introduce Danny Badger, who's supervisor of youth development programs at the Aquarium. Hailing from the Pacific Northwest, Danny studied six-gill shark and dogfish population dynamics at the University of Washington and bluefin tuna home range estimation at the University of New Hampshire. Since 2006, Danny's been working in husbandry and education at the Aquarium, focusing on enriching science content of our programs for the Aquarium's youth development efforts. Please welcome Danny Badger.
Good evening, everybody. So it is my privilege to, in turn, introduce Rachael Miller, who has been a sailor, swimmer, diver, and lover of the water since before she could walk. Rachael majored in marine studies and underwater archaeology at Brown University and participated in the Sea Education Association's Sea Semester and has done some field studies program in Baja, Mexico. She's gotten around to some pretty awesome places. Her experience has led her to become the first executive director of the Lake Champlain Community Sailing Center, running the first commercial ROV-supported shipwreck tours in the U.S. And she acts as the ROV pilot trainer for Video Array and ROV manufacturer in Philadelphia. Rachael is also an instructor trainer and race coach trainer for U.S. Sailing, a member of U.S. Sailing's training committee, and holds a USCG 50-ton master's license. She kind of likes the water. She does a lot in it. All of these experiences have led her to create the Rozalia Project, which is where I met her. She has done some programs with our summer camp and really helped to engage them and kind of create that connection from service to a little bit down deep, using some of these tools that she's going to talk about. The Rozalia Project works to connect people of all ages to the underwater world and inspire them to be part of the solution. To explain this in better detail, please help me welcome Rachael Miller.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me at this volume? Yes. Great. The first dream I can remember remembering was breathing underwater. And it's the only dream that I've had my whole life. So when someone asked me, why are you here? Why do you exist? Kind of a scary, crazy existential question. That's something I drew on to think about for a while and realize that I'm here to live the ocean. More than just love the ocean, but live the ocean. And that's taken several forms. Danny just told you a lot of them. Until about 4 years ago, when my husband James and I went on vacation, just a little 3-day mini break to Matinicus Island off the coast of Maine. And there just happened to have been a nor'easter, and I spent the first day of our vacation kind of like a crazy person, pulling trash above the high tide line and making little piles. And James, watching me kind of throw myself around about this, had my epiphany. And that was, there's one thing that really has made me angry from the day we met at a sailing regatta in Miami Beach, where we had to walk around the hypodermic needles to get to where we needed to go, to that day 4 years ago, in October, almost exactly 4 years ago. And that's trash in the ocean. And so he said, let's do something about it. So I thought, well, now who's the crazy one? Except that we realized that any big problem starts with little bits of the solution or little efforts that eventually makes the whole. And so we decided, let's go for it. And Rozalia Project was born. The mission of Rozalia Project started with a very marine debris focus, because that's how the project started, inspiration-wise. The mission now is that Rozalia Project is here to develop and implement solutions to a healthy ocean, to a clean and healthy ocean. And our cornerstones are to use innovation, education, cleanup, and science to get the job done. But we needed a name, and so we went through some very boring clean ocean names for a while, and then James had another epiphany, and that is, let's name it after the boat that my very beloved grandmother and great-grandmother came to America on. They escaped Russia, and we have all the paperwork. It's in a Jewish history museum in Philadelphia. So we went cycling through the family photocopied records, and we found the manifest and the photograph of the boat, and it's called the Madonna. So that wasn't going to work. And we realized that the name was staring at us the whole time, and that is my great-grandmother. It is the woman for whom I am named. That's where the R's come from. And I was born on the 2nd anniversary of her death, making her my fairy great-grandmother. And so that is how the name Rozalia Project came. 4 years later, we have picked up over 500,000 pieces of trash, worked with hundreds of extraordinary people, including people in this room, and have been part of some really cool science. That's all part of the solutions. Before we talk more about solutions, though, I have some background information and a little bit of myth busting to do. So first things first, why we're doing this. I think everyone in this room has probably seen enough pictures of the primary reason most people think of, or the primary danger to marine debris, which is entanglement, strangulation, ingestion as it relates to sea creatures. So I'm going to spare you those photographs, though that is a serious problem with marine debris and danger with marine debris. One of our instances that we had with it really was that glass bottle, and that smudge is actually a crab who seemed to have grown up in the glass bottle, so we broke the bottle and set him free. At any rate, alien species transportation is a problem. That's what the middle picture is showing. Something that the tsunami debris is a function of the tsunami debris. It's bringing species without predators, ones that lived happily in Japan but shouldn't be living happily on the Pacific Northwest. And then, of course, there's economic problems. But the problem that we didn't know about when we started Rozalia Project, and one of our big inspirations now, is a problem that is related directly to humans and the human food chain, in addition to the food web of the ocean. And that's the presence of persistent organic pollutants and toxins. So the situation is that marine-borne plastics have this attraction. They have persistent organic pollutants adsorb onto marine-borne plastics. So with a B, absorption would be what you do with your lotion. It permeates the surface. But with a D, adsorption would be like what I'm doing with my clicker. It's sitting on top. It's adsorbed. So we have toxins or persistent organic pollutants adsorbing onto marine-borne plastic, and then creatures ingest those pieces of plastic. And recent scholarship has proven that those toxins then desorb and go into the tissues of these creatures, great and small, from the bottom of our oceanic food web to the top, plankton to the great whales. And that is a big worry and a big inspiration for what we do. Furthermore, there are some persistence issues with some of the trash in the ocean. All right, so we'll see what you guys got here. Who's awake after dinner or before dinner? How long, and you can shout out the answer when you've got one, do you think it would take for the end of a cigarette filter, the filter end, to break up into microplastic, because it's not going to dissolve. Plastic doesn't dissolve. It only breaks up into microplastic. How long for it to break up so you didn't know it was a cigarette anymore in the marine environment? Somebody give me an amount of time.
1 year.
More than 1 year.
5 to 10.
Ooh, somebody's good right here. Somebody said 7 years, and that is exactly the answer. So if we threw a cigarette in the water today, on average, it would be gone a year from now. And this is the scene we see a lot. A lot of cigarettes out there. They're taking a long time to go away. How long do you think it would take for a can? There's a big range here because we're talking about soup cans to beer cans. Give me a number.
200.
Oh, you guys are so good. So good. So 80 to 200 years is the time it would take for a can to corrode in the marine environment. All right, I've got a lot of pictures from Boston in this talk. Here's the first one. This is what the bottom of your harbor looks like in a lot of places. Boston Harbor is kind of covered in beer cans. So I have a little theory that it seems Bostonians have a chronic problem with throwing your beverages in the water, starting with tea. And it seems like there's still happening because these are cans, plastic cups, beer-related items. All right, plastic bottle, what do you think? There's a trend.
1,000 years.
So less than 1,000. I think someone mumbled somewhere in the 500 range, so you got that. Around 450 years is the extrapolated time because plastic hasn't been around for 450 years. And here are some water bottles sitting on the bottom of the Charles River, very happily, for a lot more time. All right, this is the last one. Think about what glass is made out of. So someone give me a really big number.
30,000.
Bigger than 30,000.
It never goes.
Yes, 1 million. The extrapolated number is that it would take about 1 million years for a glass bottle, if it doesn't get picked up and played with by animals or beaten up on the rocks, to go back to sand. And I will say that for Rozalia Project, glass is the very last item we will make an effort to get out of the sea, focusing our efforts first on plastic and then on metal. This photograph is a Hood milk bottle we pulled out of the Charles River that has 1938 stamped on the bottom. So now a little bit about sources. This is not picking on Boston. This is in Chicago. This is Burnham Harbor in Chicago, but looking pretty typical for an urban harbor, at least surface in the corner. This is atypical. This is in Newport, Rhode Island this summer, and it is the worst we've seen. It's very interesting. In my opinion, what we have here was the perfect storm of human use and trash receptacles not so present, and more human use, and a lot of wind and tide all ending up in this one corner. But this area was about 10 by 40 feet, was covered in what you see here. Cups, 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 bottles, cans, wrappers, a few bait bags here and there, a baseball cap every now and then, koozies, and that kind of thing. It is the worst we've seen, and we did clean it up with a combination of underwater robots and divers, because it was in only 10 feet of water. Another source of marine debris is related to natural disasters. I live in Vermont, and I live in one of the towns that was cut off when Hurricane Irene hit. So I went from living in a valley to living essentially on an island. And this is a photograph of the Connecticut River spilling out a whole lot of sediment, and likely a whole lot of houses that were downriver of me, I live up high, into Long Island Sound. So that's a source. This is here in Boston, in the Charlestown Navy Yard near Courageous Sailing. It was about a 10-minute, very quick and hard rainstorm. And out of this area, bubbling out of a storm drain, were bags and bottles and wrappers around every 3 seconds. Something else would come bubbling up from the storm drain. This is between Cuttyhunk and Martha's Vineyard in Vineyard Sound. So we've got these rivers of trash, whether they come from Vermont because of a storm or come from the roads because of rains and out through storm drains, out the harbors, and now we're getting into the coastal area. So this is a slick or a mat of a mix of organic and inorganic matter. And we stopped and we cleaned it up for a few hours. And if we don't stop it, it is going to end up in the middle of our oceanic gyres. Who here has heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? You probably have heard, this is the myth-busting part, you've probably heard that it can be seen from space, that it is twice the size of Texas and a mile deep. Well, the situation is that that's hyperbole. What we have in the center of every single ocean gyre, and there's not just the great ocean gyres, but there's a Gulf of Maine gyre, there's smaller ones. But in the middle of these circulation patterns, there are incredible accumulations of microscopic pieces of plastic. So it looks like the beautiful ocean that we love, but when you put a net in with a small enough mesh, it comes up full of microplastic, plastic that's less than 5 millimeters in diameter. Of all the papers that I have read, there is right now a zero percentage of tows that have happened in the middle of the oceans that have come up trash-free, except that you can't see the trash. So, Rozalia Project is working near shore and in coastal waters closer to the source where we can find and implement solutions to not let the trash get so small and so far away where it's really not that economically viable to get. And our first innovation, the one that we kicked off with, was using remotely operated vehicles. This is a micro ROV, even though on this awesome screen it looks humongous. It's actually the size of kind of a big toaster oven. It's made by a company in Philadelphia called Video Ray, and it is an amazing tool for us to both find and remove small marine debris in up to 1,000 feet of water. So here we are collecting one of our most frequent items, which is a plastic cup. And it also allows us to connect people to the underwater world right at their feet in real time and show them that what's down there, well, may be surprising or just may be cool because it's a creature. We have some accessories on the ROV that are absolutely amazing. This is a multi-beam sonar. So this is seeing with sound. We've acquired a target here. And we've acquired the target 20 feet from the ROV. If you're thinking, oh, that target looks like a derelict lobster trap, you are correct. This is a derelict lobster trap in Narragansett Bay. And we're flying the ROV to that target using the sonar because this was the visibility on that day. This was the target, the trap. We had about 5 feet of visibility. So without this sonar, we never would have been able to find this target, which we did pull out of the water. I am getting to know the visibility in Boston's waters. This is the Charles River, and this is unfortunately what you kind of have to get used to doing underwater work in the river, which is what is around the outside. So if I said, what can you see in the box on the outside? The answer really should be nothing because it's hard to see, but we have a very cool piece of equipment that does image enhancing. So what you're seeing now in the middle, which is enhanced, is an old but not ancient ship's bell. And it now is in community boating, and they ring it when good things happen and at the end of the day, which makes us really happy. Okay, so we are now going to play another game. This is Name That Marine Debris, the Boston edition. All Boston. Okay, so I will do a little bit of, I'll give you the obvious ones. Top left, I don't think my thingy works. Oh, it does. So right there we have a water bottle, plastic bottle, a can, and that's a crab. You guys can see that. This is clearly a red Solo cup, and that's a can. So I gave you all the easy ones. Yell out what you think this is. Top right corner. We found it here off the docks of the aquarium 2 years ago. Towel is close. It's fabric, but you can wear it. Thank God it's not underwear. Somebody said pants. That is in the ballpark. Good work. Those are a pair of jeans. Okay, let's go with this. Second one down on the left. Looks like calamari, but it's not. What's that? It is a scrunchie. Excellent on that side of the room. All right, so interesting perspective on underwater. That's a headband, and this is a tire. They sort of relatively look the same size. All right, let's go. Bonus points. Love middle on the right side, middle right there. It's kind of funky. Overhead view. What? A what? This one here? Ooh, that's such a good guess. No one's ever guessed that. It is not that, but we're going to get to that. Okay, we'll do this one first. Ooh, whoever said battery for this one? Yes, golf cart battery, and the other one's a battery too. You guys are good. So the middle one is a cordless drill battery. Cordless drill battery, we cleaned the contacts, charged it up again, and used it. The best kind of marine debris is not debris at all, in my opinion. Okay, good work, people. Oh, this is a chair up on the top middle. One of those plastic, cheap plastic lawn chairs. So these are all in Boston, all recovered. Another innovation, not so much that we use a sailboat, although we use a really cool sailboat, but it is what we've got on this sailboat. First, a little bit about it. It's called American Promise. And some of you may have heard of this really happy guy. See how happy he is? He is that happy because he just crossed the finish line after sailing around the world alone, without stopping, in world record time, 60 days better than the last world record. He was the first American to solo circumnavigate. Again, his name's Dodge Morgan, and he did it on this boat, American Promise. He donated the boat to the Naval Academy after, and we acquired her 4 years ago. She is our research and trash hunting mothership, where we do all of our work, a lot of our science and cleanup under sail. What's unique about what we're doing, or what we're trying to do, is put equipment on board this boat that other people can use that is moving towards sustainable. So we just replaced the engine with a Tier 3 marine diesel. It is low emissions, low particulate matter, high efficiency. So in numbers, we went from a gnarly old black smoke belching engine that propelled us around 5.5 knots for 2.5 gallons an hour to a quiet, low noise, low vibration engine that propels us 8 to 9 knots for under 1.8 gallons an hour. And that makes us very happy. Our next steps are to feed our other electrical needs, which are instruments, refrigeration, so the house needs or the house bank, with solar and hydropower first. Another one of the innovations that we're using is taking existing high-level weather information, grid files and high-resolution information of surface currents, to find areas of accumulation in the coast. So what we have here are isobars, a very faint little pointer. So you see right here a 56-degree lobe of water. It stops right about where that red triangle is. So that's showing cold water coming in from the Canadian fishing grounds, and it basically stops there before the water gets warm next to it. We're matching the same day's information, but this is current. The little purple triangles, the bigger they are, the faster that water is moving, and you see that that stops dead right at about the same place. For some geographic reference, this is between the two approaches to Portland, Maine. So that's where we are right here. And this is what we found at that area of convergence. A slick of organic and inorganic matter mixed. If you look not even that closely, because it's huge, you'll see balloons and buckets and oil container things and another bucket or two. And I don't have sound on this because my interns were saying really bad words as we sailed by this slick. And we see this slick in that location frequently because from our research and our work, it appears that that is a sort of a center of the Gulf of Maine gyre. Before we go and just put huge nets on that kind of a slick, we need to be able to separate because we don't want to pick up anything that's alive. So for us, bycatch is anything organic, anything alive. We don't want it. We want it to stay in the sea, from plankton to algae to fish and everything. So we're like anti-fishing. We just want to fish for the trash. And so we're working on a low bycatch marine debris net in order to exclude the organic matter. So we're doing a little bioengineering. It's called the baleen basker. So it's got a little bit of basking shark in it. That's this sort of angled gills. And a little bit of what we're calling baleen. And that is this fuzzy stuff. It's a polypropylene baggy wrinkle. So baggy wrinkle, for the sailors in here, they used to make it out of hemp, and it would help keep the sails from chafing on the rigging. It's sort of this fuzzy thing. So we've made the same fuzzy thing, but out of plastic. And it's important that we made it out of plastic, because in addition to the physical angling of all this, the situation is that marine-borne plastics don't want to stick to algae or fish or anything like that. They're what we call oleophilic, which means they're oil-based, and oil-based things want to stick to other oil-based things. You could also say they're hydrophobic, which means they don't want to stick to the water. So that's why your drops of oil sometimes all glob together when you're cooking. That's oleophilicity happening. So we've got that concept, and we are testing that by hanging our interns off the end of the spinnaker pole to feed measured samples of plastic and algae and all sorts of organic matter, not live things, into the baleen basker. Phase 2 testing this summer has us recovering around 90% of the trash and reducing around 48% of the organic matter. So we're getting there, almost. We are also going to change the architecture of the net to something a little softer and less clunky. People have been asking why we have bird cage on the boat, which is awkward, as opposed to our baleen basker, our innovation. And our real goal is to scale this thing up, to put on commercial fishing boats who are going to the places that we can identify as convergence and accumulation zones and see if they can start, in a coastal sense, going where they go already, getting some of this trash out of the water. This is an innovation that hasn't started yet, and I can't wait, and you'll see why. Right now, the information that we get concerning litter is, especially on the shoreline, is kept to what people pick up. So if there's something particularly gross on the floor, it's hard to get to, or crazy rocky beaches like these in Maine, we're not necessarily getting that information. Even when there's a lot of trash on a beach, we're still held to data that is based on what people have picked up. And those slicks on the water need study. And I give you the unmanned aerial vehicle. I can't wait. I get to match playing with underwater robots with aerial robots. Like, things are getting better. And we're going to use the UAV, or a drone, to get more accurate litter surveying done, both on the shoreline and on these slicks. We have a fellowship or a guest scientist program. So we're acting as a ship of opportunity for people whose colleges perhaps don't have research vessels, or even people who are in colleges or universities with research vessels, but who can't afford to go out on their own boats. We're very, very low cost. In fact, free for scientists. And we had University of Exeter researchers, that's Exeter, England, come out with us this summer doing really cool groundbreaking work on plankton poo. So it turns out that plankton near England there's microplastic in their excrement. And that is very alarming, because it means that the plankton are ingesting this microplastic. So we are going to find out hopefully any day now, because they're doing it in the lab back in England, what the situation is on this side. But I imagine it's going to be about the same. And they also looked at creatures in the sediment and their relationship to microplastic. We also had a guest scientist from the Ocean Conservancy come on board and do something quite different, which was collect bottle caps. And we were testing out their data cards to see how they worked in places other than in urban cleanup. So we'll actually have people on board doing their own research completely. It doesn't have to be marine debris related. If you or a colleague or a friend or whomever is doing work and their work is on the Gulf of Maine, where we're going to be, have them give me a call. We have a very fun, and there's a couple in the audience, internship program. But it's more than sort of just fun, and we do take boys too. And that is, we have the interns involved with every level of our work: science collection, data analysis, the hard, heavy manual labor of schlepping trash around, sailing the boat, and participating in the next cornerstone of our work, which is education. This was one of our exciting days here at the New England Aquarium with their camp kids, Danny's camp kids, who were great. I love this picture because it's 8 middle schoolers all looking at the same thing at the same time, and they're all psyched. And the rest of the class was lying on the dock waiting to see what the ROV would bring up, which is a pretty typical reaction for us. We have found that people of all ages connect with some aspect of seeing underwater or being underwater or the technology that gets them there without chucking them overboard. And this is my favorite picture from the summer. It was taken at Jamaica Pond at the Community Sailing Center there. This is what we call ROV face. ROV face, this is kids, they're looking at the screen. And this is the first time they've ever seen underwater live. One of my interns had a camera and captured it. Cleanup is another cornerstone of what Rozalia Project does. And we're cleaning up surface to seafloor. This is a photograph from some work we did, some is a small word for it, work that we did in Vermont after Hurricane Irene. We teamed up with the Vermont Department of Labor, put 41 people who had lost their homes or jobs because of the flooding back to work cleaning public spaces in Vermont that had gotten completely covered in trash. They kept data on everything they picked up, which was over 500,000 pieces, and that included 2,000 tires. We like to make people pose in front of the trash they pick up. And here are our 2012 interns in front of really just some of the 12,000 pieces of trash that they picked up in 3 days in Frenchboro, Long Island, off the coast of Maine. As you know, we are using the ROV to clean the bottom, and we're getting everything from, call it cigarette-sized, to bicycles. We got a lot of bicycles over the years. This is at Courageous. In case everyone's wondering, they don't float. As fun as it seems like it would be to ride them off a dock, there are consequences. And we clean the surface different ways. So these are just using dip nets, basically pool skimmers, and that balloon is not going to get away. Every balloon we see, we try not to let get away. Dip netting, whether we're just finding one item and trying to get it, or we're on one of these slicks or mats, ends up being some of our interns' favorite activities. It's a very satisfying, somewhat exciting moment when we are arriving to a place to grab the dip nets. And you can see right here a close-up of the Newston net, which is a typical plankton net or open mouth net. It's not exactly the best way to clean up because of its indiscriminate nature. It's picking up everything, and that's why we are working on the baleen basker. Our last cornerstone is science and research, and one of our biggest projects right now is an urban waters floating trash study. So we, like I said, we're focused here on urban waters, coastal waters, right at the source. Recognize there's your fair city on the top left. And then if you're thinking, oh, the one to the right of that is San Francisco, you're right. Under Boston, anyone?
Chicago?
Yes, Chicago. Excellent work. And then New York City next to that. Our methods for the urban water study are what we call science toes. They're not opportunistic. So opportunistic would be, look, there's trash. Pick it up. Mark it down. That counts for our total, but that is not an accurate way to say how much trash is somewhere. So the way we do it is 1/4 of a kilometer in a straight line. So we put our trash blinders on. We obviously don't want to bump into vessels or anything like that. But as far as trash goes, we go in a straight line and position our interns and our official lifeguard Hickory, that's the Newfoundland, position them with dip nets so that if there's trash, we can keep it from going by. So 1/4 kilometer straight line, that's how we're collecting these results. Once we have our net full, not when we have it full, after we have it at 1/4 of a kilometer, we bring the net out of the water and we start sorting by hand, by nice young intern eyes. And this is the kind of stuff we find. It's looking nice and big there, but it's small. And you don't even need your 3D glasses for this one. This is another frequently found item in urban harbors. This is an exfoliant bead. It is made of plastic, and it is used in many face and body washes instead of a better option like apricot, ground up apricot shell, or other types of items that people are using that are natural. There are still a lot of companies that are using a plastic exfoliant, so you're rubbing it all over your face to get rid of dry, dead skin. But the problem is our sewage treatment and our wastewater treatment facilities were not made to handle something so small that is solid and doesn't dissolve. So without being more graphic than that, what's happening is that these exfoliant beads seem to be escaping our gray water or wastewater treatment and ending up in our harbors. We've found them in pretty much all of the harbors. Here's some results and the 10 cities that we've tested. In order, those numbers are pieces of trash per square kilometer. Pieces of trash per square kilometer. So in order, in case that's a little bit small, LA, Long Beach, Philly, New York, San Francisco, San Diego, Seattle, Chicago, and Vancouver, with a big difference, especially between LA and the rest. But a square kilometer is kind of a hard thing to visualize. So we've been working on trying to make that easier. So consider an Olympic swimming pool. And you can pick a lane, and that lane will have the concentration of trash equal to the or proportional to the concentration of trash in that city. And say you're Michael Phelps, and it takes you 34 strokes to get across. Here's what your lap would look like. You would get hit by a piece of trash every 3/4 of a stroke if you were as fast and as long-armed as Michael Phelps. But no matter what lane you picked, here's the number of pieces of trash that you would hit going just one lap, one length, from one to the other. So in Boston, Michael Phelps would hit a piece of trash every 3rd or so stroke. So that's a little bit on the concentration. Looking at the distribution is another way to look at this information. And to see that we have an imbalance or an incredible amount of stuff floating in LA. We have similar amounts on the eastern seaboard and very little up in the Pacific Northwest. Now, one thing I want to point out here is that this is what's possible, or you could think of these as snapshots. So I could go in Boston an hour after taking a sample in the same spot, but because it's a different time of tide or the wind might have shifted, and get a completely different reading. So for what we have here, we are not making pronouncements that LA is the dirtiest harbor, period. That is not what we're saying here, but we are saying it is possible for LA to have a harbor average of 282,000 pieces of trash per square kilometer. Here's why we found LA to have so much trash. Here's just a little bit of info. Look how many pieces of microfoam we picked up. So microfoam is pieces of foam that's under 5 mil. A lot compared to the next item. And here's why. Because between toes, we picked up a chunk of foam that came out from a dock. So this was a dock float. It had been wrapped in plastic, but that plastic must have broken. And these chunks of foam, that's Rebecca, she's in the audience, my previous science and education coordinator, throwing living stuff back so that we can get this out of the water because it was spewing pieces of little foam spheres. Just thousands, millions probably of them as it drifted around. So we're working with some local organizations to try to figure out a way perhaps to get the municipalities or the decision makers to pick a different type of foam, perhaps closed cell or a higher density foam for dock replacement. I thought I'd give you information on your own harbor, sort of sitting right in the middle right now of our urban waters studies. We've done more tows in Boston than other cities, 14 total. And in terms of difference to other cities, there's a little bit more in terms of scraps of monofilament and rope net fiber here than other cities, which may be related to just a little more fishing in close. Here is an example of the way we do our tows. 2 tows in each zone. Zones are approximately 1/4 kilometer square, depending on the size and the shape of the harbor. I would say right now there isn't really anything important to say about track 3B having the least and track 7B having the most. It's just something to start out knowing, and we're going to add our information as we do more and more tows. So if you were going to think about the fact that we collect data on every single piece we pick up, what would you expect in the top 10 items that we find on the seafloor? So you can mull over that for just a moment. And here it is. You probably already guessed cups as our number one item. But the other stuff, does anyone see a theme there? Stuff you eat. Yeah, there's a fair amount of plastic. This is stuff that's sunk on the seafloor. But it's nearly all related to loving the ocean and wanting to hang out next to it and eat near it. Or there are other reasons related to overflowing trash cans and things, but it's all everyday stuff that we all use. So here's something very interesting that we learned from keeping all of this data. I'm going to show you the top 5 items, or the top items that we collected on starting on the shoreline. So you just saw the top 10 on the seafloor. We're now going to the shoreline. So for those of you who like words, you can look at the words. If you like pictures, remember the pictures. We've got pieces of plastic, pieces of glass, pieces of foam, food wrappers, and rope. Top 5. Here are the top 5 floating on the surface that we found. You see, we've only switched one. We've lost the glass because that doesn't float, that sinks, so that can't be in our top 5 surface. And we've exchanged it for cigarettes. So now, let's look at the sediment. The sediment, I put the top 7 because that's all we've got. The top 5 we get are pieces of foam, a little bit different order this time, pieces of plastic. We've added plastic sheeting and tape, of which we find an incredible amount. Glass comes back into it. Food wrappers, which were there the whole time. Now we can bring cigarettes and rope pieces back in. And so what that means is that if we take the shoreline, the surface, and the sediment, we consider the top 5 items that we've found in each. There are only 7 discrete types of items in each of those top 5s. Furthermore, in our urban water study, we picked up 799 pieces randomly in 10 cities all over the US. There were only 16 different types of items in all of that. And hopefully some of you are thinking, but that's great. It's not space junk. It's not made by other people that we can't find or identify. This, for me, is great news. It's all the same stuff. It's picnicking stuff. It's stuff that we all handle all the time. And so for us, prevention through education, and I've got some solutions coming up right here that we think are going to really make the difference once added to the other innovations that Rozalia Project and other organizations are working on. So how can we all be part of the solution to the it's not space junk, but it's stuff we use all the time that's in our oceans problem? And one has to do with garbage cans and trash management itself. So if you are in a position to manage public trash cans, keeping them on a good schedule so they don't overflow is obviously of huge importance, because overflowing trash cans near the water, they have got to, I don't have a number for it, but it's got to be a big source. I heard that Boston does have the big belly solar compactors. If you haven't seen them, this is a picture from San Francisco. First of all, they're paired, which means there's a recycling and a landfill trash right next to each other. That has, through numbers and research, been proven to be more effective. They use solar power to compact the trash, to use less space, and they notify whoever's in charge of it, usually the municipality, when it needs to be changed. So you can't get a situation on the left. If you are in charge of corporate space, you can make it very beautiful, the way that you can recycle. Because reduce, reuse, recycle really works. They figured it out. This is kind of cool. Again, in San Francisco, they're doing composting. This is in our partner at Kilroy Realty Corporation in their corporate office, and they're composting. Here's some other cool ideas. Again, paired, quadrupled trash cans, giving people opportunities to separate, continue to close the loop where you can, and offering alternatives to single-use water bottles. If you guys want a Coke, go ahead, have a Coke. But if you can figure out a way to bring your own water or do something like this for an event, it's awesome. This takes just a normal potable water hose, plugs into the barrel, and there's a filtering system, and people just fill up their water bottles. It worked spectacularly at the America's Cup World Series last year in Newport, where we were. That's where we first saw them. Storm drains are an issue, respecting them, and Rozalia Project is we're going to start looking at this, because after seeing that Boston, the Charlestown storm outflow situation in just a 10-minute rainstorm, it definitely has us thinking, maybe there's something we can do on the water end, maybe it needs to be done on the top end. We're not sure, but it's something to think about. You guys are already being part of the solution by being interested enough to bring yourselves here tonight. If you want to keeping in touch with Rozalia Project and essentially learning what we learn, we're sharing what we learn through an expedition report program. It's online, it's free. You just click on the thing that says expedition reports on our website, rozaliaproject.org, and just keep learning. I'm going to wrap up with some highlights and unusual items. I won't even ask you to guess, because our most unusual item off the seafloor is not the girl. It's a witch's hat. We found it in Jamaica Pond, and I will say I had a very clever friend suggest maybe the witch melted, which, being near Salem, you guys should get. This is what it looks like. This is a plastic butt that we got out of the water in San Diego Harbor, and we don't have time, but I will say that it included Coast Guard participation, Coast Guard with a boat hook. And I can also tell you that a boat hook is not the best way to pick up plastic butts from your harbor surface. This is our oldest item. This is a moonshine jar from the 1800s that we found off of City Dock in Annapolis. We had an interpreter from the Annapolis Historic Society come and tell us what it was, which was exciting. Another historic item that we found, can you see what it is? It's an anchor, excellent. We found this in Narragansett Bay. Actually, Laura, who's sitting in the audience, found it as an intern. She was flying the ROV. And we pulled it out of the water. It's a beautiful bronze anchor built between the two world wars. Goes with a little Harrishoff 12, and it's in their museum now. This isn't exactly a highlight, but I did want to include some of the very small items that we find. On the left are resin pellets. We find them everywhere, from the shores of Lake Champlain to, I'm afraid, a lot floating on Charles River and in Boston Harbor. They are pre-production plastic. They're my clicker before it takes the form of a clicker, or a toothbrush before it becomes a toothbrush. So it's coming from a plastic manufacturer before it gets molded into something useful. So they really, really shouldn't be in the water. It should be in the water even less than a water bottle should be in the water, because it's actually industrial level debris, pre-consumer. Those little various levels of dirty dots, those are exfoliant beads. The other one we found was prettier in blue, but they make them in white and black, and some of them have been dyed in the water. Okay, here I bring you our underwater greatest hits. So first we have a double grab. This is what we call a double grab with the ROV. It's very exciting to do double grabs. So we've got 2 cups. They're going to happen in one grab. I think our biggest was was it 4 or 5? I think it was 5 items. It was like 2 cups and a piece of monofilament and a little scrap of food wrapper or something in there. We teach our interns to fly the ROV. I'm not the only one that gets to have all the fun. And we have sometimes kids, sometimes other interns or volunteers helping topside with a dip net so that we don't need to pull the ROV all the way out of the water. And we let the trash go, throw any organic matter back in the water, and go down and do it again. This is an angry crab. Well, it's about to be an angry crab. That's what crabs look like when they're kind of angry. So we don't mess with the wildlife, but it is important to us that we see wildlife. Sometimes the wildlife is doing funky stuff. This is here, Charlestown Navy Yard off Courageous. We want those glasses. And we want them because the girl who owns them, her sister, is in the program on American Promise screaming and yelling behind us going, "Those are my sister's glasses! You have to get those glasses! She lost them 3 days ago." So the crab wanted the glasses for a while and then decided he wasn't quite sure what we were. We outstared the crab down, and now he's trying to escape. except he has to do it by climbing over the glasses, a solo cup, a beer can, and another big cup. So he's literally having to battle his way to escape the ROV, and we did get the glasses. This is an invention. I'm showing it to you in hopes that all of you engineers or tinkerers can help us out. This is low budget, though effective. It is difficult for us to pick up cans and short neck bottles. You see this little short neck on this thing? It's very hard for us to grab with the ROV claw. So this is our can grabber, but you see it's attached by duct tape, which is kind of awesome, but not ideal. So any of you thinking of anything, teachers want to put the problem out to your students, bring them on. I'm ready to try out your ideas. This bit of video is from a derelict fishing gear survey that we did in the Isles of Shoals. So we were in Gosport Harbor, so beautiful, 7 miles off the coast of right where New Hampshire and Maine come together. And we were surveying around moorings. So we'd sit on a mooring and search around. We'll see who the eagle eyes are in the group. There is a creature. Anyone see the creature yet? See the creature yet? Yeah, good eyes, good eyes. We didn't see it until it started moving in real time when we took this video and when we were doing the searching. Sort of alarmingly, around 3 moorings, we found 41 derelict traps and associated stuff, like rope, incredible amounts of rope, this white thing poking out on the top right up there, and on the other side is a buoy. This is my favorite Sonar video ever. Okay, here's the deal on Sonar. The bright light, that thing on the bottom, is a fish in the Delaware River with about 5 inches of visibility. Sonar or sound can't go through something, so it casts a shadow. And it is the acoustic shadow that gives you the information of the shape of this fish. So watch both the return, but watch the shadow. Because in this case, it's the shadow that tells us it's not an eel or something. You see that right there? So again, that's acoustic shadow from that blue view sonar. We literally had 5 inches of visibility. So this was the best part of the day in the Delaware River in Philadelphia this spring. We do our work because of a lot of great partners, corporate partners, foundation partners, somewhat local partners, and certainly a lot of organizational partners. We are grateful, of course, to the people that help us with all that amazing technology. And I'm going to leave you with the words of some great high school students who are absolutely living the ocean in Lake Minnetonka in the middle of the country. So one of our activities that we do with kids is after the presentation, we ask them to do public service announcements. And so this is a public service announcement brought to you by the Wayzata sailing team, high school sailing team, from kids all over the area. Here we go. Okay, go.
That was a good drink. Guess I'm done with it. I've done my part for the world. What have you done?
Thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate it, and we do have time if people have some questions. Does anyone? Yes?
What do you do with all the trash you collect?
So the question was, what do we do with the trash? In the perfect world, the trash we collect isn't trash. And I will say that at least 2 years ago, we picked up $1,200 worth of returnable stuff from the bottom. Tools and sails and all sorts of stuff. So that's our ideal. Second place is recycling. Third is to at least get it to a landfill where it can't blow back into the water. Yes, sir?
What are the impacts of the trash that you see on the impacts of local marine life?
That's a great question. The question was, what have been the impacts in Boston Harbor, the impacts of the trash that we've seen in Boston Harbor to Boston Harbor's wildlife? We have not found any direct entanglement situations ourselves here on the bottom or on the surface. But like you saw with that one crab near the sunglasses, there's definitely some habitat mixing going on. And that's something that I was speaking with one of the researchers from the aquarium today. And doing stuff like this is so great for us because I meet people who are psyched to do that work. And we're actually going to start, I'm going to look back at all the footage that we have to now and continue to make sure that we video future interactions that we see between marine debris and creatures in this area on the bottom. And we're going to see if we can learn something more specific than what right now looks like inconvenience, but could be worse.
I think of threats to the ocean, heat shocks, acidity. Plastic is fairly low, it seems to me. Can you help me?
So the question has to do with kind of prioritizing all the stuff that's being thrown at our ocean, from climate change and ocean acidification and that kind of thing. What we see as the problem with trash in the ocean, especially plastics, is this contamination of the human food chain. That every 2 days, I'm reading a new paper that is tracking and proving the transfer of the same persistent organic pollutants that are adsorbed onto marine-borne plastics into the tissue of more than just seabirds, but into the fish that are part of a web that we're relying on for food. And that is related to all the rest of it in terms of there's some big picture problems, but that is alarming when you also start to look at statistics of how much of the human population the ocean feeds. And I haven't read yet that this person got cancer because of this fish that they ingested, but I feel like it's a matter of time. So I haven't read that yet, but I feel like it's imminent.
Is your data that you collect useful for other organizations who are doing the same thing? Like, are you collaborating with anybody else?
We are absolutely happy to share our data for sure. And we work with various organizations. I've had people call. Recently, someone wanted to look at the clothing industry and wanted to know how much clothing we find, which is alarming amount of clothing and shoes. I've also had someone who's working on designing a better fishing bobber, perhaps one that is somehow degradable in the water. And they wanted to use our data to see how much fishing gear, and specifically, do we find a lot of lures and bobbers and things like that. So we are absolutely open with our data, happy to share it. We're using our own data, I keep doing that, our own data to try to make things like cleanups more effective. So if we can keep getting data on a certain location or in an area and say, oh, we know because we've been keeping track that after a southerly, this beach is really full of trash, and after a northerly, this beach is full of trash, then when you good people say you will give an organization who's doing a beach cleanup your precious hours of volunteer time, we can help direct those 2 hours to a place where your effort's going to be most efficient. So that's another way we're trying to use the data. We would be happy to share. You guys have a trash boat. You're one of few harbors that have a trash pickup boat. So wouldn't it be interesting for us to be talking to them? They might need to use smaller nets because we're finding that the diameter of a lot of the trash is quite small. Or we find that the baleen basker can start working in a harbor. Or they need to go to Charlestown after a rain when it's a northerly, because they could sit right there and get a whole lot of plastic bags while they're still big plastic bags. Yes?
I was with you a couple of years ago at community boating when you, I think, found and then we couldn't grab a pistol that was in the water. And I'll always remember that. But that left me remembering the pistol forever in the waters of the Charles, but also wondering about the futility of trying to get what's there. Is there anything that can be done beyond individual robots?
I don't know if everyone heard the question. This gentleman brought up a memorable day in Rozalia Project's history, which was in our first year of operations. We were at community boating, and at about 7 at night, right before the sun was set, in fact, the sun was basically setting, we came across a gun. We weren't sure if it was a real gun, if it was a fake gun. Ironically, I backed up to see, I tried to pick it up, which may or may not have been foolish. We never found out, because I backed up to get a better grip and got a plastic bag stuck in the propellers. So then we couldn't move, and then we had to bring the ROV back, and we spent another hour looking for it. We never found it again because the visibility wasn't good, and at that point it was nighttime. So the question was, we never found it. There's all this stuff. I think you're feeling a little overwhelmed. Like, is it futile? right? Futile to try to do this. So Rozalia Project believes that every bit helps, that it isn't worth throwing up our hands and thinking that it can't be done. One of my best analogies, hopefully this works, is think when you're a little kid and you have a really messy room and you really want to do something and your parents say, you can't do that thing until you clean your room, and you look at your room and you're like, that will never happen. I will never be able to clean my room ever. And then you get locked in your room, and then you pick up a sock and you put your sock away. And then you pick up a book and you put the book away. And eventually your room gets cleaned. And I think that's how we're going to deal with this. We're going to start in lots of people doing their part, picking it up. We're going to let people innovate and encourage people to innovate and see if we can do some big picture solutions that don't suck up all the plankton as well. And just keep rolling with these kind of programs. Hopefully all of you go home and know that every little bit makes a difference. Because there's 200 people here, that's 200 things that are going to be better, hopefully, tomorrow. And that just goes exponential. So if that feels ridiculously optimistic, I understand, but it's the only way we can operate, and I think the only way anything will get done. Yes?
What's the practicality of cleaning up the Pacific Jar with all that huge amount of stuff?
The question is, what's the practicality of cleaning up the garbage patches in the center of the Pacific or other gyres? I don't think it's viable. It is why Rozalia Project has focused our work very specifically on urban and coastal waters, because it is small out there and it is far away. And in many cases, it's smaller than plankton, the very foundation of what we need in the ocean. And we can't be picking up all the plankton with all the trash and call that fixing it. That's another reason we're doing our best on a low bycatch net. And I figured out on a long plane ride once that a 5-gallon paint bucket, those plastic 5-gallon buckets, if we let it go into the ocean and start swirling around and photo-degrading, it'll turn into 10,000 pieces of 2.5 millimeter plastic, which is the middle. Microplastic is 5 mil. So that's still kind of big for the center of the gyre. So that's 10,000 of those. And I would much rather pick it up as one bucket right here in the harbor. And so we are focusing our work here because we think if it's going to be economic and feasible, it's going to be here close to shore. Yes. We have worked this year with over 70 education organizations all over the country. Thousands and thousands of kids. This year we've worked with kids and adults mixed, just under 9,000 people. And we are doing a combination of a presentation similar to this with a little more gameplay and using the ROV to connect people to what's going on right at their feet. Whether right at their feet are lobsters chasing us down, which happens in Maine, literally chasing us down, or Newport covered in trash. It was the kids that found that Newport garbage patch for us. And we are, again, trying to give them realistic optimism to be part of the solution. We also have the mission reports or the expedition reports that people who are leaders of kids or families, we have a lot of homeschool families participating in that program and learning as we learn. So our education component has always been a very large part of what we're doing with Rozalia Project, whether it's working with Danny and his spectacular kids and instructors here at the camp, or in Minnesota, or I gave a presentation to 850 elementary school kids in San Diego. If you want to keep track of what we're doing, I hope that you will like us on Facebook, follow us on any variety of social media. We do not send a lot of newsletters out, but you can sign up for a newsletter on the website. You have one more question?
Yeah, I'm familiar with American Promise.
Yeah.
So I know the history of what makes that a good platform for what you're doing. It seems like, like a research vessel, link or something, or a smaller, line platform.
Yeah, the question was, why is American Promise a good platform for our work? First of all, we spent $350 on fuel this year, and we sailed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We covered hundreds of miles. I should look that up so I can give you the exact number. So in terms of getting places, we're doing it under sail. The boat is a blue water boat. It has sailed around the world. The Navy did sink it. That would be a good story I could tell you later. They raised it, they fixed it, and then they sailed it back and forth to Ireland and France lots of times. She's as safe a blue water boat as you get. So as far as what I'd want to take out to sea when we start going farther afield, it is that as opposed to a smaller research vessel. In terms of fuel consumption, it is superior to everything that we found, especially with our diesel. And yes, not having like an A-frame on the back limits us to the amount of or the size of equipment we use. But for now, we have chosen relatively portable and small technology. And we've been pretty crafty with our spinnaker poles and other types of leverage we can find on board to do similar work that an A-frame might do. We've been really happy with the boat. It houses 6 passengers and 3 crew comfortably, kind of most of the modern conveniences. It got a little hot. We were here when it was 108 degrees last summer. So I won't lie about it being a little bit of a sauna when it's 108 degrees in Boston, but she's a comfortable boat, sails beautifully, and we're able to fill it with interns who've never been sailing before, teach them to sail and to do it in a safe and relatively secure manner.
How come there's not bigger vessels skimming the water all the time, like especially in the Pacific Gyre area? I know it's a lot of small particles.
Yeah.
But to catch some of the bigger stuff that's like out there, why isn't it constantly?
Yeah, so the question is, why aren't there more boats out there in the middle skimming or cleaning? And I think it's because nobody's mastered low bycatch yet. And whenever anybody suggests just a big, so someone, a young man from I can't remember what country, suggested a big kind of skimmer thing that was solar powered and could sail itself around the oceans, picking up stuff on the surface. But the problem is with it is that it would get all the plankton too. And we are all for that kind of big thinking and innovation, just need to keep working on that low bycatch element. So I think that's one of the reasons. The others, it is hard to find the big pieces at that far. Yes, sir?
Is there a level where bycatch is acceptable because you're removing plastic?
That's an excellent question. Is there a level where bycatch is acceptable because we're removing plastic? I don't have a numerical answer for you. For us, we will take something that is acting as a substrate. So substrate would mean stuff is growing on it. So we pull something out, let's say a bottle or whatever, and there's lots of creatures on it. So for us, if it's plastic substrate, we'll still take it out. Those creatures will be sacrificed, but if what's happening is they're pulling toxins into them, and then they're going to get eaten by something bigger, for us, that's an acceptable exchange. I don't know that I have a number when you're talking about healthy living plankton. That's an excellent question. And someone had a hand over there? Yes.
I have the impression that a lot of the debris coming to the ocean is coming down the roots.
Yes, we think so too.
Have you done any transects in river mouths?
How awesome would that be? So the question is, there seems like there's a lot of water coming out of the river, a lot of trash coming out of the rivers, and that's what's feeding the harbor trash. Have we done transects or anything to compare river mouths to other parts of the harbor? We started doing that in LA. Our second LA location was essentially the LA River's outflow. And that is something we also want to use our drone project to look at, is to run transects and see if we can learn some of that kind of stuff on a more frequent basis than running the boat back and forth. The one limitation of American Promise is that she draws 10.5 feet. Yeah, so the sailors in the house, like, I heard the groans. That's a lot. In the Northeast, it means you can't always get very close to shore. So we're hoping the UAV can help us with stuff, but that is an excellent question and a great research question. Well, I love engaged audiences. If you have any more questions, please email. Oh, there's someone in the back. Yes.
It strikes me that separating plankton from plastic
food to either repel or attract, probably be a pretty tractable project. And maybe you could find a high school or a college research group that are looking for an interesting project.
That is awesome. And I will keep spreading the word. I've been trying to encourage that with everything from solutions like that. That's an excellent one. And I think you're right, because that has some really good learning involved to even attempt to try to figure that out, to designing our can grabber and that kind of thing. So that's a great idea. We'll certainly continue to spread the research questions and the solutions that we need, what needs to happen to everybody, high school, college, homeschool, whomever. We know there's a lot of creative, smart people out there. We just got to find them and get them psyched. Thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it.